This is SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. I'm your host, Todd Kirk, and I am joined by Brent and Mike of Live with Brent and Mike, and we're super pumped to have them on. Mike Simmons and Brent Schlenker, I got it right the second time, I think, seem like a super awesome pair because of their background, both in L&D and security, coaching, and all kinds of really great things. Super pumped to have them on. Brent, Mike, welcome to SaaS Therapy.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So I got to know, Mike, before we were talking in the show, you were like, man, Brent's just like this old guy who's been around forever and seen all this different stuff. And, you know, I'm the spring chicken of the two, even though maybe none of us are really super spring chickens anymore. But I would love to know about your relationship a little bit. How did y'all meet? And help our audience understand a little bit more about your background and what you do.
Boy, how did we meet?
It was so long ago. I don't even know. You just know each other since the eons.
There was a beach, there was an ocean, some theme music in the background. I forget if it was Chariots of Fire or a Rocky montage, but it was one of those kind of things.
Oh, that's so good. So good. Well,
so Brent ran a group called the Learning and Development Community, and I was active in the learning and development space. And that was how I knew somebody who was part of that, who got me introduced. And then a number of years ago, I actually spoke at one of Brent's events in that area. And we kind of have circled around each other in different ways, shapes, and forms, but didn't really start doing things together until about 2017, 2018 kind of time period.
Wow. Okay. So that's a pretty long time. That's almost a decade.
It's been a while. And we like each other enough that we still hang out with each other. Or at least Brent tolerates me.
Yeah, we put up with each other. We have a good rapport, a good back and forth when we're live, and we both come at it. We're both have experience in the L&D space, but we come at it from different angles and different approaches, which makes it really nice. So it's not like we come from two totally different worlds and we're trying to have this conversation about learning and development or customer education or anything like that. And then we both just are talking about two different things. We're in the same area, but just approaching it with different perspectives and a different eye from different angles. And so it makes for a nice, healthy conversation.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, if you like SaaS Therapy, we do a weekly show. These fellas do a daily show talking about stuff that's going on, which, man, I feel burnout most of the time just talking app once a week. But to do that daily, that's a lot. So I'd love to, maybe Brent, this would be a good question for you, because I know your background is in L&D specifically, a lot around design and adult learning theory and andragogy and all that kind of good stuff. For all of our customer education listeners, I probably would love to geek out about all of that kind of stuff with you. But what I'm curious about is, so first thing that comes to my mind is a lot of times I run into this thing, and I don't know if when you've worked with customer education professionals specifically, but the concept of L&D and customer education have a lot of overlap in what they do. But L&D kind of tends to be this broad overlaying term or idea. But customer education people specifically don't really like being bucketed in with that audience specifically. When you say L&D, like, what do you think of? Like, who should care about that in a more broad sense? Because that's actually one thing that I sometimes run into is like, don't call me L&D. I'm not an L&D person. I'm a customer education person. So I'm curious, like, how do you like to think about that? And maybe frame that up for our audience today so that as we go into any direction we want to go in, we can, like, what do you mean by L&D? What do you mean by learning and development?
So first of all, that is the most amazing insight that I've heard in a long time. And I really appreciate you saying that. So I'm going to go scrub L&D off of my LinkedIn profile completely and not let anybody in the customer education world know that I am that. So thank you for letting me know.
By the way, I still say it too. I'll say, oh yeah, L&D. And a lot of times for customer education, they're like, no, L&D is what my customer does. Like they're doing learning and development. But I'm like, I have always felt like customer education is part of L&D, but yeah. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what the answer should be, but I'm curious your take on that. And like, maybe how do you help people understand, like, what do you mean? And what do you care about? Who are you trying to reach?
So I have a saying that I like to use and it confuses a lot of people, but I came up with it in the hopes of clarifying it for people. So I'll try it here with you today. So training is an event, learning is a process, technology supports them both, and performance is our ultimate goal. And what I mean by that is all of those words that we use in the semantics around the industry, both of the industries, has a tendency to sometimes get mixed and used in the wrong ways. For example, I can't learn you. I can't. Learning belongs to the person consuming the content. It's happening in your head. It's a process. It's a long-term process that happens over time when you're exposed to different things and having experiences. Okay, that's different than training. Training is an event. Even if it's a tiny little event that you're having in the flow of work. I know that's a super popular thing right now. And people will say, well, it's in the flow of work, so it's not training anymore. I define it as any time it's a defined block of time you're spending away from doing work to consume something new that's helping you perform, whatever that may be, whatever word you want to use. It's an event of some sort. And that's where the profession comes in. We help design the interfaces and the things that help facilitate and speed up that process. So I also like to call people knowledge brokers. And in what we do, we broker the knowledge. We help people that need the knowledge get it from those who have the knowledge. And the best thing you can do, the most perfect solution, is to just hook those two people up, connect them together, and perfect, you're done. But you don't win any awards for that. You don't get any kudos. You don't get a raise for doing that. So we come up with all these different fancy ways to take that knowledge out of one head and put it in the other and move on. And so it's issues like that. And that's where I see that it's not so if we take the terminology out, what you do for your customers and what you do for your internal customers, external customers, from a learning perspective and a training and learning and performance and using technology to enhance all of those and to make performance happen, all the same, different context, different end users, but the work that you're doing is the same. Mike, did I touch on everything? What did I miss?
Yeah, I think the big piece beyond the foundational stuff that you went through there is that view on customers. You've got people you serve that are out there. Those people may be inside your organization, internal customers. They may be outside of your organization. You might pay some of those people, they might pay you. They're still people, they're still humans, and they need to go through this process that we understand from an adult learning theory perspective, and how people learn, and what we experience and what we forget over time, and what we lose based on our expertise. You get all of that stuff pulled together, and ultimately the connector, the problem solver here, the catalyst, is the ability for someone who's got an understanding of both the process, the design associated with it, and the need to hit an objective, so they can enable all of those, and they go in there and they extract that information from the person on the other end. So I think you nailed it.
Okay. Oh, I love this. By the way, I love this idea of I can't learn you, because initially I think most people would say, meaning I can't force you to learn. And I know my wife for a fact will agree with you. After 20 years, she hasn't gotten me to be able to learn any of the stuff that she wished that I knew and was able to learn. So, which is really good. But I think that's one of the things that is interesting, because you mentioned a few things. Obviously you need to know kind of who the people are that you're trying to reach. You got to know how to reach them. You got to know what they care about, and you have a reason why you're trying to reach them. And you need tools and resources in particular to make that all happen. And I think one of the things that I run into is a lot of times the learning that we want to see occur doesn't really happen. And I always wonder where that breakdown tends to happen the most often. Is it because we've done a poor job of identifying the audience? Is it because we've done a poor job of identifying the objective? It's because we've done a poor job of picking the right tools, or because we just didn't take into account how people learn. So, like, where do you see the biggest problem in your experience where the breakdown occurs? Because you, especially, like, let's think at an organizational level. Maybe I've got some massive organization that has like 80,000 employees, and I'm trying to drive some experience out. Most LMSs have less than 1% of users who actually do anything. And so why? Like, where do you see that happen? I'm just curious. Where do you think the breakdown causes learning to fall apart and not actually occur?
I think you might be asking the wrong question. So,
Okay.
so is it that the learning doesn't occur, or is it that the behavior doesn't change?
Mm. Well, I mean, the more important one, at least from my perspective, because I'm all about behavior change. I care way more about that the behavior occurs. But honestly, one of the things that's hard is we see learning as a key lever in causing that to happen. But if you don't know if the learning is happening, you can't see if the behavior is changing. What do you do? So yeah, so it's a
So
good
here's
setup, Mike. I want to take that. Where
Yeah.
do you want to go with that?
So there's a model, and this comes where I was introduced to it was when I operated in the cybersecurity space, specifically around human factor risk, and it's a behavior change model that comes out of research in the UK. Mitchke is the person, one of the people who is led on this, and it's called COM-B. Have you heard of this before? Okay, so the first C is capability. This is the knowledge and skill piece. What do people know? What can people do? The second letter, the O, is opportunity. What's the operating environment, the leadership, the culture, the operating system that they're involved? How much else are they taking on? That's the opportunity piece. And then the third one is motivation, which ultimately gets into the do they give a crap factor? Like, do they care? Right. So too often, if we agree with the thesis that your wife would like to see your behavior change and she thinks it's a knowledge and skill challenge, then I don't care how much training you throw at you. If you haven't solved for the other two, behavior isn't going to change. So what I would suggest is if you're in that environment, the first thing you have to look at is let's look at what we're trying to accomplish from a behavior perspective, and then map that against capability, which is super easy to test. Do people know what to do? Can they do it? When you meet me in person, you know that I am built to run through things, not to dunk basketballs. I, I may know I mean, if you give me a trampoline, I might be able to dunk a basketball. But I know what to do, but I don't have the capability. I don't have the skill to do it. So if that's the thing, then let's solve for that. Let's move things along. But if it's that I just trained everybody on how to do it, they went to their sales kickoff or their whatever meeting that they went to, or they listened to the all hands. And then when everybody goes back into work and pipeline's not being created, it's not being developed, everybody's like, forget all that stuff that everybody else talked about. Just get back and do your job. Now, what you've done is you've created a culture where the learning is not actually being applied and the information is not being applied to help. So you're disabling your team. And then on the next side is the motivation piece. Like, do they care? Like, you care about your wife, right? And you probably know what to do and how to do it. What might be happening is you might be adding too much to your list and getting distracted so you don't have the opportunity to do it, or something else is getting in the way, or whatever the thing is. So maybe it's less about learning and more about behavior in that context.
Yeah, love that. Brent, what would you add there?
I think you're getting a little too close to therapy there, Mike, which is a little
This is
bit
SaaS therapy, Brent. That's the whole point here.
I paid attention.
this piece. I think over the last, I don't know, 3 decades of the changes that we've all seen and gone through, from the early days of corporate universities and whatnot, we're still suffering the hangover of what large, you mentioned 80,000 employees, so I'll roll with that. For Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, whatnot, large companies and how they deal with it. So education and training became a machine, just like everything else, and it became a giant machine that was basically existed to feed itself and to keep itself alive. So, and that's where the giant enterprise LMSs come in. And people, in order to keep their jobs, it's how many courses do you create? How many things do you have? How much stuff can we offer our employees and go, look, ooh, you want to come work for us because our LMS has 50,000 courses, and that other company, they don't even, their LMS maybe has 1,000 courses, but wow, think of all the learning you can do. Well, okay, whatever. There's a whole bunch of issues and problems with that. The point I'm trying to make is that when we look at whether or not learning and development is a failure or a success within the corporate environment, when we look at it from the sense of our LMS doesn't have the engagement that we want it to have, I think to Mike's point, the world has changed and the LMS world has not. And the concept of how we train our employees and how we motivate our employees and how we keep employees learning has changed significantly, but we have not kept up and gone at the speed of business is kind of the way I like to refer to it. And we're still stuck with too many old school systems that weren't built for today. They weren't built for 10 years ago. And now we're in the midst of the AI speed transformation, and everything is changing exponentially, and it's just, and we can't keep up. There is no way our old systems can keep up with what's going on. So that's where I think we're failing. I don't know if that answers your question or not about the big enterprise, but
No, I love that. In other words, so Mike, you mentioned motivation is a problem and opportunity is a problem and capability is a problem. And those are all really key things when we think about the individual user and getting them to change. But then, Brent, you're mentioning on the organizational side, we might be using the completely wrong tool set to actually help those three things occur. Is that fair?
yeah, I think so. I mean, the and it's, the tool sets are trying to change. It's just it's the speed and what you're trying to solve for, to Mike's point, right? What is the business actually trying to solve? Are you trying to get people to feel good about the fact that there's a lot of things that they can learn? Or are you actually trying to help them get better at their job, be faster, build more widgets, create things faster, be more productive, right? This is why I say performance improvement is the ultimate goal, and everything we can do to impact and change performance, behavior, whatnot. Those are the triggers that we're needing to connect with. And that's the biggest problem that learning and development, corporate education, corporate universities, they've had a very difficult time being connected with that. Now, from a customer education perspective, maybe a little bit different. The point has always been to teach people the software that we sell them, right? So, the tools sometimes work for that, but a lot of times there's more on the line with your customers learning than there is your internal employees taking a random course that they saw that they might be
Well,
interested in,
yeah, because if they don't
right?
learn and they don't use it, then they don't renew and you lose that customer. So like that's
Exactly.
there's a really big there's a lot of pressure in the customer education space to succeed. The hard part, and this is just something I've observed, is a lot of times the people in the customer education world, they don't have a direct connection to the end user who needs to be trained. In fact, it has to be filtered through multiple layers because at an organizational level, if I work for a SaaS company or some software company that's trying to drive that education, I might be creating the resources and creating the academy. And I hope, cross my fingers, that we did a good enough job of helping people discover it on their own, which again is only going to reach people who are already motivated, right, Mike? But then if I'm going to go try to find somebody else, I got to go through the customer success manager, who then has to go to the champion at the organization, who then has to go to the HR person who owns some project internally, who then has to hope by the time I'm 4 or 5 steps removed, that last person gets to the last mile and sends the information out to the people who need to know about it. And at that point, I may have no control or feel like I have no control on doing any of that stuff that Mike just mentioned before. So there's a little bit of this telephone game that can tend to happen. And by the end, the water doesn't ever get to the end of the row. And that can be a really big problem.
The it can be, but it's been solved before. Like this is not a mystery. This isn't one of those things where you're like, huh, I wonder philosophically, how might we solve the problem? No, there's a clear path to solve the problem. You go out there and you do usability studies. You interview your customers. You identify the customers who want to share information. You create user groups, not user groups from an admin perspective or a business ownership perspective, a user group perspective from the people who are actually using the platform, who need to solve the problem that you're solving for. I don't think this is about educating people how to use the tools. I think what it is about seeing how people are using the tools and then designing properly so that people use the tools in the right way. And this is where PLG got such really good attention. It was like, hey, we're going to go this product-led growth model, and we're going to take all the cool data that we have because we've got all this website analytics. We're going to bring marketers into the discussion. We're going to understand all of this stuff. And ultimately, did we grow? Maybe in some instances, but was there a disconnect between the people who are using it and the people who are actually buying it, the people who are paying for this thing? And there was. I mean, remember, in any problem that you're solving for inside an organization, there are people who have the problem. There are people who are impacted by the problem. And there are people who care about the people who have or are impacted by the problem. And if you don't have their three perspectives, you're operating blind. So it is not a mystery. It is solvable. I can tell you this, whenever I've been in a CRO role inside an organization, if someone has asked me questions about what is happening on the user side or how to get a better understanding of this, I am happy to have the conversation. What I am not happy to have the conversation is someone to come to me and say, here's how I think you can do this better. Are you kidding me? Like, I have a number that I need to hit. I've got 800 people who are trying to help me do whatever that thing is better. But what I don't have is one person coming to me trying to get context so that they can deliver the solution in the context of what's most important to the person on the other end. So I think we can apply PLG. I think we can, and then layer in sales assisted, and then go through and apply different models to help solve for this challenge. I can also, with the exception of one client in my history, I've only had one client who was expanding that didn't renew. If your clients are expanding, if they're growing, if you're helping your customer do the things they want to do better and faster, that enablement piece, they're growing. Their adoption will grow. They will likely renew with you. You will retain them through expansion, not work the way that a lot of people try to work from a support perspective, which is, ooh, I want to hold on, I want to retain, I want 100% retention. No, let's expand and see what happens on the retention side if we're actually delivering real business value. So again, I think it's another one of those things where if you ask better questions, you get better answers. And sometimes we're asking the wrong question because we want to go in there and solve that thing. Like, I can solve this with an LMS. Well, then Degreed rolls out a learning experience platform, and then everybody jumps in on that. And like, what are these different layers that we're putting in? And the other question I would ask, and I'm kind of running on a little bit here, but the other question I would ask is, who else is doing this in a different context? A lot of times people talk about the Uber of whatever, or the Netflix of whatever, or the whatever of whatever. I mean, heck, there are ways. We know the impact of dopamine on humans. How can you use dopamine to help keep the humans doing the things that you need the humans to do to help drive the results that you want? And do you actually know how you make money as a business? Because if you don't, you have not earned the right to have this conversation.
Mike, I want to say amen and preach, brother, when it comes down to something very simple that you said at the very start, which is what a novel idea of actually like talking to a customer and learning what they care about rather than just like getting in a room by yourself and thinking you know everything and then building some over convoluted process and system that they're going to hate and they're not actually going to ever use.
Here's the other thing about it. You got me fired up. Like I said, this is going to be spicy today and all that kind of stuff. But we get pissed off at our leadership inside organizations for making decisions without a connection to what's happening inside the organization. And then we go out and make decisions on behalf of our customers without knowing what's going on inside their organization. Or we like the whole Spider-Man meme.
That's so true. I love that, man. What an honest take that I hope people here actually think about for a minute is like, oh snap, do I do that? Because I guarantee you there are a lot of people who are sitting there right now saying, wait a minute, I know I've complained about my executives for making decisions without understanding what actually happens in the business day to day. And meanwhile, maybe I'm doing the exact same thing to my actual customer. Whew, man, so good. Brent, I mean, do you have a spicy take on this side too, or is there hope in this? Right? Or what do we need to do? How do we look introspectively and understand the fact that maybe we might have a problem we need to address?
Well, you're talking about this on the customer side, right? On the customer education side. So this is where my mind is at right now. And I don't know if this is going to answer it, but just from my experience with the last SaaS company I was at, it's true. The buyers aren't the same people that need the training. They typically are not the same people that end up using the platform, right? And so you need somebody and it can't just be a bunch of stuff online. You've got to have somebody willing to connect with those end users and spend time with them and get to know them. And again, they're often overlooked because they're not the buyer. So the sales team is always engaging with the buyer. Hey, how are you guys doing? How are you liking it? Let's do a quarterly business review, blah, blah, blah. And let's have a conversation with them. And the buyer is like, yeah, my people seem happy. We're there doing stuff with it. I don't know. Let me go ask them. Do you guys like it? Yeah, hey, whatever. And they give a bunch of feedback. But what I'm a big proponent of is having and building your user community, and not just an online community, but a real live, engaged community. This is why I'm fully invested in daily live streams and think it can be done. And I've been doing them for years, and it is the best and fastest way to engage with folks. Some have been more successful than others. Some have been turned into weekly instead of daily. But when you're engaging with the actual users, you have a whole different question. And I'll try to keep it in a box. I would do I started off with just one weekly live session for the users. And it freaked everybody out, the leadership. I said, and we're not going to have an agenda. It's basically, you get to hang out with Brent for an hour. And, I know their tool. I know all about instructional design. I know all about how to do L&D inside of a big business. So you're basically getting free consulting for an hour with Brent. And for the first, few weeks, several weeks, it was very quiet. And the people that showed up, which was great. So success number one is people start showing up. Perfect. Okay, great. But they're very quiet, very hesitant to talk. Luckily, I'm not cursed with the I need to be quiet gene. I have no problem filling an hour's worth of time talking about what I'm passionate about. No problem at all. And so I just will start the conversation and just start talking. And I will give a demo. I'll show a particular thing that I learned about the software, whatever. The hour is up. Thanks for joining, everybody. This was great. Done. Next week, we come back, we do it again. It's quiet. Sooner or later, somebody gets brave enough to ask a question. And now you've got people engaging and you have questions. Here's where the success comes for customer education, customer success people, is when you get to the point where everybody in there feels free to ask questions and answer the questions. By the time, I don't even remember how it was, I knew I had won when I could sit in my community hour-long meetup and not say a word. Wasn't planned. I didn't have to do anything. Sure, I did my regular fun introduction, but that was it. Everybody else carried the conversation. Somebody asked a question. Somebody else jumped in and said, hey, I did that, or I've got something similar. I know how to do that. Let's do a screen share real quick and I'll show you how I did mine. And then somebody else has a question. Next thing you know, everybody's learning from everybody else. Pretty soon, you've got a whole bunch of people educating each other, hanging out. You've built a tight-knit group of people, and it's possible. And you can do that with a small customer base. You can do it with a large customer base, and it works. That's how you get people to become passionate users of your platform. Yeah, you can crank up a university. You could crank up an online community and chat, a discussion board, whatever. But until you get real with them and get them in a room together, talking and sharing and getting to know each other personally, that you're not going to be able to build that. But to me, that's the biggest win.
I love that. I think that's such a good and wise insight there. And, the only thing that I would guess is I know there's a lot of people who have probably tried to do something akin to that. The one I hear most often is like, oh, yeah, we set up office hours. But office hours isn't attractive. And usually what it means is I'm going to sit there silently in case somebody shows up and asks me a question, right? Just like I'm a professor at a university. And that sucks. Nobody wants to go to that. So I think
you have to. Yeah.
Your point is a really good one, is like, if you're going to do it, I like the idea of thinking it more of like a live stream where it's like, hey, come, there's going to be value here regardless if people are talking or not. But I want to create a space where now all of a sudden people can feel that. The question is, like, a lot of these things, I don't know, I sometimes feel like people in this world feel like Sisyphus, right? They're just pushing that boulder up the hill forever and it just keeps rolling back down. Do you have any ideas of like, how do you get the boulder to the top of the mountain so that it can get rolling? Or how do you know when you've done that? I mean, I guess you kind of have already alluded to that. It's like, hey, if it might take me a month or two to get something going. And if all of a sudden that thing can roll and keep rolling without me, great. But I guess, how do you not get discouraged when you're trying to build something, trying to get that thing going? Because those early days sometimes feels like you're making zero progress, or every step forward, you're falling backwards and not really getting where you want to go. Any thoughts on that? How do you stay motivated to keep pushing the boulder up the hill?
Well, like I said, I love doing it. So I think that's maybe I'm a unicorn that way. I
So
mean, maybe,
just be insane like Brent and you're fine. Yeah.
maybe that's just
Just
it.
be a glutton for
But
punishment
yeah,
and it'll be great. Yeah.
yeah, I love the industry. I love the work that I do, and I love the software too that I was teaching people. So I had no problem, explaining to people what was great about it, and being honest, being an authentic being. I used to tell them, listen, I am you. I just happen to work for the software company. I'm you. I do your job. I would hold consultants. I would do consulting stuff on the side. I built my own projects for customers on the side while I was doing the gig, so I was them. I just happened to have a connection that could be helpful. So like I said, I mean, knowing when I was successful and knowing when it was successful for them, that's when I knew I was successful. When they were feeling successful utilizing the platform, that's where success wins. And then when I started to expand it, so like I said, it started off with North America because that's where the larger customer base was. But then I started doing a late evening one that, much to my wife's dislike, to cover other time zones. And then I would do an early morning one too. So I covered the whole globe in the week. I had an early morning, a midday, and a late evening throughout the week. And so got to cover all the customers throughout the process. And of course, the North America one was always the most popular and had most people on board. Cultures are different, right? Asian culture, a little bit less likely to speak up and to talk out of turn and interrupt each other and just have it and go at it. Americans are much better at that, so it takes a little bit more prodding to get other cultures to do it. But you can, they get used to it. They start to figure out what the culture is going to be like in this space, and you just have to foster that. You have to be willing to be the one to engage with others and make, like you said, perhaps put something in there and talk to them to make it worth their while. If it's not going to be value add for them to be there, then they're not going to want to show up. So always adding value is, I think, the gold nugget.
Yeah. Well, and Mike, I don't know if this is from, because I know you have a little bit more of you've been a CRO, you've been more on the sales side of things here. And like, to bring a guy like Brent in to talk to a customer oftentimes really feels awesome. But I feel like the hard part, like to get a guy like Brent to build a community, you have to also have people who are willing to tell their customers, go talk to Brent. You got to show up. There's a lot of value here. Oftentimes, the people who might have the experience or the wisdom or the willingness to hop on a call are there, but you need some way to bring people in and get them interested and willing to engage that way. Mike, any thoughts on that, of things that you've seen? I don't know if you've done a similar program or something like what Brent's talked about there, but like, what do we do to try to get people in the door to just even show up to see if there's something valuable there, right?
I mean, we're struggling with it with our daily show right now. We're trying to figure out, like, how do we do it? One, do people even know we exist? So that's a big one. And the way to help people know you exist is you just tell them directly and say, hey, this is something we're doing. Not force them, not say you need to be here or you must be here or any that you should be here. All the words that I know Brent really likes. That's not the way to do it. It's, hey, by the way, we're doing this thing. If you want to join, join. And when you join, just going through Brent's model here, you join, then over time, you continue to join, and then ultimately you get to a point where you engage. And then when you engage and others start to engage, then they carry. And it's the start, it's the show up, it's the engage and the carry. And I think the piece that we struggle with is we forget that there are people out there who deeply care about the problem that you're solving for. They're passionate about it. They may not be the executive, they may be the janitor in the room, whoever it is, they deeply care about the people who have the problem or the people who are impacted by the problem. When they care about it, then they start to amplify and then they start to share and they start to get that momentum going. So let people know, number one, you'll get feedback. when you when you let people know. Because if you let people know and they don't show up, then that's probably a pretty good indicator that they just don't care, or they're not really into it, or whatever. And then when they do show up, ask for feedback. Like, just what do you like? What do you not like? When I do one-on-ones, these are my big 3 questions. What's working? What's not working? Where are you stuck? You don't have to answer you don't have to put an answer to each of those, but just know, broadly speaking, I'm going to ask you, hey, what's working right now? What's not working? What's stopped, and where are you stuck? And then we can help to solve for those specific problems. So that's how I do it. But we're still trying to figure that out. And maybe one of the things that came up in the conversation today is maybe we need to look at different time zones, Brent. But
It is, well, yeah, and I think it's a little different. Let me separate the two real quick. So what Mike's talking about for our show in particular, and
y'all are in your own kind of startup mode, trying
for
to
your
do
show,
your own
it's
stuff.
marketing and stuff like that. When we're talking about the customer engagement type stuff and the customer success and dealing with that, you've got a built-in customer base that has a need, and we also had a feeding path into it. So I was also partially, I didn't do all of it, but I did half it. There was only 2 of us doing the onboarding sessions. When a sale would occur, one of us would do the onboarding sessions. Well, part of the onboarding process, other than teaching them the basics of the platform and how to use it and all that kind of stuff, is onboarding them into the community. So it's onboarding them in the software, onboarding them as a customer, but also onboarding them into the community. And I created a process around that, about onboarding them and easing them into it. And then in general, when you are building a community, there's actually some behavioral science around how most people, now there's a lot of differences, but how most people will engage with a community, and how they go through these different phases of, I'm a lurker at first, I'm just kind of testing the water, I'm just so you got to give those people a certain thing. And then they might get brave enough to ask a question and engage, and then it kind of steps them up to the next level, and now they're engaged, and now they've got some investment in it, and then they move on, and then they start participating and adding value instead of just asking questions and consuming content and value. Now they get to the stage where they're now part of the community, and this is where they feel like they own it, they're a part, they really are a part of something. So there's all that stuff that goes along with, that's connected to both, whether no matter how the community got formed. But I think from the customer and the product, and that from a SaaS therapy side of things, we have an unfair advantage on that side, in that we get them. We have an owned audience right up front, and we get to ease them in and onboard them into the community and to the content and to the education.
To build on what Brent shared there, and we did this at SmartForce back in the day. So this is back between 2000 and 2008. When I was at that organization, we were acquired by a company called Skillsoft. That was my first entry into this space. One of the most important conferences that we held every year was I just had a brain fart where it just disappeared. But it was the user group conference that we would have for SmartForce. And the cool thing about it was, as a learning consultant, which was what customer success was back then, or an account manager or an account executive, you could invite customers to speak. And then you get some of those customers are really excited about, they want to share what they're doing. So you find those people who want to spread the word. There's a really good book out there called The Influentials that gets into some of this kind of stuff. There's going to be a subset of your existing customer base that you have access to, who wants to participate in this. They're looking for it, and they want to contribute back to the network. 85% of the customers who participated in that event each year increased the amount of money that they spent with our company in the following year. 85%. And it wasn't because we had salespeople up there in front of the group, or product people in front of the group talking about how all of this stuff works. It's because we had customers sharing their stories, how they're using the product inside that space. So you've got them inside your audience. Make sure you take that point that Brent shared, but you already have a group of people who are committed to the success of this inside the organization because of the way that they're using it. And you've got the data, you know who your power users are. And if you don't have that data, go talk to somebody on the data side inside your organization and figure out how you can figure out who those people are.
Love it. And I think that's something that you can't take for granted, because I think a lot of people don't realize the fact that everybody, like, I just was talking to a learning experience designer recently who did a user study, and they were shocked afterwards. They're like, we have people that like us. Like it was literally one of those things of like, people
They
care.
like us. They really like us.
Like, they really like me. They really like me. And what's funny is a lot of people don't realize that like every organization has, like, if you were in business, if you ever sold anything, the person bought you because they had a problem they believed you could solve. Now, you may suck at solving that problem. You might not actually be doing it, but maybe you are and you don't even know it. Or maybe you're solving problems for them that you didn't even know you were solving. And unfortunately, most organizations do a poor job of learning and understanding where those users are, who the users are, what they care about, and how they can tackle it. So this has been a really great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. We try to keep these to about 45 minutes. So I'm going to ask you one last question. You can both answer it. Okay. So this has been therapy. We've got into some areas that probably, brought up some strong emotions, because this is typically a therapy session. But what does every good therapy session end with, fellas? You got to have some assignment, some homework that you're going to take, that you're going to implement and do differently. So based on this conversation, if each of you could give our listeners some element of homework, what would it be? What would you ask them to do?
I thought you were going to say group hug, but never mind.
That's fine. This is virtual.
Mike,
We
you
can
go
do
first. I'm having to
group
clear
hug,
that
but-
from my mind.
Clearing from your mind, I missed it.
Well,
The group hug?
th-
Yeah, that's what
I-
he's saying.
yeah.
Put that out of the hug.
Yeah,
thought-
well, Brent's the hugger, not me. Yeah, I mean, the big thing for me, and this connects to the adult learning theory piece. You've learned something. You've heard some ideas. You heard something new. You might have heard Brent talk about, hey, first do it, start it, then show up consistently, get others to show up, get them to help them engage, and then help them carry, kind of thing. So you learn something. Well, think about how it applies to what you already know and what you're already doing in your business. You do this stuff every day. Like, you are a professional. If you weren't a professional, you wouldn't be doing it. So professionals have a process. They apply these things daily, over and over and over again. Just like when you watch people play soccer, we've got the World Cup coming up. I think they call it football in other places, but when you watch little kids do it and you watch big kids do it, it all looks the same. You know what game you're watching. So be a professional. So think about how it applies to what you already know, and then write down at least one, ideally three specific actions you're going to take. And this is my learn, think, act model. You learn something new, you think, you reflect upon how it applies to what you already know, and then you use that reflection to increase your comfort in taking action. And when you apply it, you get to relearn, you get to rethink, you get to retake, you get to act again. And this loop will help you continue to improve. It's about continuous improvement. So that's what I would do today. I'd write down the things I learned, how that connects to what I already know, and what actions I'm going to take.
Love it. Brent, what's your homework, my friend?
My homework for folks would be, since this is SaaS therapy, I would say aggressively ask questions of your customer base if you have not done so. Just get out there and start talking to them and engaging with them in some form or another. Do a live stream, do something. And if you're the type of person that's in that role and you're good at talking to people and you're good at doing your job, but a live stream or leading a Zoom meeting or this, that, or the other thing, maybe it's not your thing. Find somebody. I'm happy to help you figure out how to get out of your shell and do this kind of thing. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't scare me one bit. So I sometimes take it for granted that not everybody is me. So, just get out there and try. One of our friends from a while back, haven't talked to him in a while, Brian Fanzo, I'll give him a shout out. He had a book, was writing a book. Can't remember if it ever got published or not, but it was push the damn button was always what he said, to try to get people to do it and just basically record social media, just get your content out there, get your thoughts out there. And I always applied that to just do the thing. Just do it. You can wait around and you wait for permission, you can wait for budget, whatever, or you can just do it. You just turn it on, you just start talking to people. You can start talking to your customers. You can just move forward. Just do something. get out there, get connected, and get that feedback from those folks. And then everything else just kind of grows from that. So don't be shy.
Okay, love it. Brent pulling out the Yoda, right? And maybe I guess you can be Phil Knight. How's that, Mike? You're the just do it, and Brent's the Yoda, and we got this figured out. It's going to be good, fellas. Thanks so
He's
much
about
for
850 years old, I think.
That's totally legit.
Thank you both so much. This has been awesome. You
Thanks,
can
Todd.
you can find Brent and Mike at livewithbrentandmike.com, I believe, and go check them out. They've got a daily morning brief they do for L&D. They talk about leadership and AI and anything and everything under the sun. It sounds like they practice what they preach. They are saying, hey, come join us, be part of this community. So I'm sure they'd love you to follow them. Fellas, thanks so much for coming on. And man, this has been great. I hope y'all are excited for the rest of this day. And hopefully it's been therapeutic for you.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. I feel much better.
Good. SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.